Today, I'm trying something new. I have a guest on this episode of the podcast. My buddy Greg Kamstra is the CEO of an awesome doggy daycare business in the greater Boston area. We met when we were basically sitting next to each other at Bain, and he's always been one of the deepest thinkers I know. We've been having some really interesting conversations recently, so I just thought it'd be fun to kind of spitball here and see where we go. So today we're going to be talking about how we think about generating a return on investment and what the possibilities might be if you started with employees first. Ready? Let's go.
Wouldn't it be?
Awesome. Thanks, Arvind. I'm honored to be here. I love the wouldn't it be awesome concept as a way to think about the world. As you know, I'm a huge fan of this concept. And one of the ideas that I think about a lot is this idea of ROI and different ways to think about ROI.
Wait, let me pause right there. So return on investment. First of all, why is return on investment an interesting concept to you before you get into the variance on it?
Well, as an entrepreneur and an investor, which prior to founding the company I'm currently working on, I had been an investor for several years, both on the public side and the private side. And generally speaking, investment concepts are rated based on their return on investment. It's a very straightforward thing. And one of the things I think about a lot is that's been a model that works very well for capital. And it is a certain way of measuring success. But I think that using that mental model and thinking about it in different ways can also be a really interesting way to think about the world and how we can benefit more people. So there are examples of things that are very well known that are almost cliche at this point, like Wikipedia, where you'd say, nobody really made any money on that.
Yeah.
But it's really not fair to say that nobody benefits from Wikipedia. Actually, all of us benefit from Wikipedia. And in some huge ways. It feels far superior to the prior model. And yet, if you thought about that from an ROI perspective, your mind breaks. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. I guess Wikipedia, you would say like that's a nonprofit, but it seems like those distinctions are increasingly blurred because what is really a nonprofit? It doesn't seem like the distinction is as black and white as you might initially want to believe.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I guess, let me put it another way. So any major business that you've ever thought about, they tend to sort of either have, somebody kind of tends to benefit first, like as sort of a business model principle. So one of my favorite bloggers is a guy named Nico Cantor, who actually, formerly was a consultant and now runs another business. We don't have to get too deep into that. But he didn't hire me, which is why I ended up at Bain, despite my best efforts. Anyways, he has this blog post called Economics in a World Where Everyone Matters. And he talks about this concept of integrated ROI. And you can think about, okay, there's a lot of stakeholders in any venture. There's customers, there's employees, there's the owners or the capital, there's the community, right? There's all these people that touch things. And the dominant business models that almost everybody has today are either focused on the customer ROI or the owner ROI. So you can think about Amazon as a perfect example of this business that just created a tremendous consumer surplus. And they believed that if you can just create this amazing consumer surplus, eventually we're going to build an unbeatable business.
Yeah.
And Google is kind of the same way, right? Like tremendous consumer surplus, unbeatable business later. That's a very common model, right?
Amazon feels so much more tangible because like you just think Amazon Prime, when it came out, it was just like, it blew my mind that they're just willing to ship anything in 2 days when the existing model seems so far from that. And for such a low, like your shipping costs were recovered almost instantly.
That's right. That's right. It is really amazing. And I think the flip side is other businesses and maybe businesses that have more kind of firm moats from the beginning often start with what's the return on capital and how far can we push that? And then they go the other way. And generally speaking, I think every good business aspires to sort of have a great value proposition for all of the constituencies. You know, Amazon, I think now actually they pay very well. They're a pretty good place to work. A lot of people have made a lot of money working for Amazon. You know, people throw stones, but in the scheme of things, they employ a lot of people and they pay pretty well, right? And customers certainly benefit, the shareholders certainly benefit, kind of everybody winds up benefiting. But how you think about whose ROI you care about first and which one you start the business model with really impacts the way that you build the business. So one idea that I'm interested in is this idea of what happens if you think about untraditional ways to measure ROI. And I think, our former employer, Bain, famously was tagged best place to work. And they really thought about our product is our people, and we're trying to make the best value prop for people coming out of undergrad or business schools. And because we believe that if we can get the cream of the crop and sort of have a really engaged employee base, that's effectively the product we're selling to our corporate clients because that's what they love. And they'll pay a lot of money for that. And as a partner, we'll wind up making boatloads of money off these undergrads who don't know any better or whatever, But the flywheel for them really started with this employee first business model.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. And I think that as we kind of progress as a society, I just feel like there's a lot of other spaces where you can take that model and you can start thinking about, hey, what if we thought about it? What if we thought about starting a business model where we thought about the ROI in kind of a non-traditional way at the outset?
But that's so interesting when you talk about Bain, because when I think back at that experience, I always tell people it was such an amazing place to work. They create a fantastic culture, and they really do emphasize that. And I'm trying to put a finger on what makes it such an amazing place to work.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a variety of things, right? Because it wasn't really so much that they paid any more than competitors did, or anything else. It was a ton of tiny little things, and then mostly just a culture and almost like an indoctrination of the belief that that's what they were trying to do, and everybody had to get on board and help try to make that true. And therefore, people went the extra yard for each other to try to make sure that everybody else's experience was good too. And the thing I think that is so cool about this is we were talking about this the other day from the education perspective, and I was thinking about my daughter. We both have young kids, and I was thinking, what if there was a school where the mission of the school was, we believe that teachers change kids' lives. Administrators don't change kids' lives. Curriculums don't change kids' lives. Tests don't change kids' lives. Teachers change kids' lives. And what if our mission...
And by the way, the evidence is 100% in your favor on this. The most important factor is not the school you go to or anything, in terms of educational outcomes. It's the teacher that is teaching your class. So 100% it is, the teacher variation completely outstrips school variation or anything else.
100%. And any adult would know that intuitively, I think, because they will think back to their own education experience and they will remember 2, 3, maybe if they're lucky 5 or 10 folks in that and they would think that person changed my life. I remember specifically, Mrs. Johnson and everything she did for me. And what if there was a school where they just said, that's what we believe, and our mission is we want to be the best place to work for teachers. So we're going to try to cut everything else out. We're going to try to cut all this administrative crap out of their lives. We're going to try to say, how do we set you up for success where you come and you're energized and you're able to just ply your craft with kids? And, best place to work to teach, it might include a little bit better pay. I think teachers certainly deserve better pay.
Yeah.
But I think it's apart from pay. It's not so much that I'm saying we need a school where all the teachers make $100K, because I think that's unrealistic. I actually think that you might not even need to tweak pay. You might be able to do it with a whole bunch of other levers in terms of culture and who's respected and whose opinions matter and who has to do what in terms of really annoying tasks and who's going to buy pencils for the classroom, right? Like really small dollar things that I think would make a world of difference to the teachers that I know.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it, honestly, is also, it's definitely about some of the events and the benefits and the perks, and it's definitely to some degree about money and everybody has to eat and that matters.
Sure.
But a lot of it, I think, is about respect and autonomy and power a little bit in the organization, and thinking you as a teacher are really respected. And I'm actually not going to come and tell you that the most important thing for the next 2 months is passing the state test, and therefore you're going to have to do these stupid drills that suck and that you don't believe in, right? I'm going to actually respect you and say, hey, we have standards and we want the very best teachers here. And you're going to be held to a high standard in terms of making an impact for kids. But I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you how to do your job day to day when I don't really know.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of, what's the phrase? Autonomy, mastery, purpose, or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that people who can feel that in their job are demonstrably happier. And none of those words is like perks or money or anything. The thing is, like, that's what people want. They want to feel like I can really contribute the thing that I know I can contribute. I'm respected for doing it. I have some autonomy in how I do it. And I believe that the thing that I'm doing is meaningfully good for society, and I'm really part of my community. And we can do so much better on so many of these person first jobs.
Yeah.
Right? It helping people feel that way and helping that be true.
Yeah. So how does that apply to Riverdog?
Well, so I could tell a very long story about Riverdog. I'll try to keep it very short. One of the things that was really shocking to me when I got into this business, as you know, when I started in the business, it was really intended to be a much smaller part of my life and a little bit of a side project that I was working on. I took over a very small dog daycare from a couple people who had retired, and there were 3 employees there at the time. And I think the thing that really blew my mind was just how talented they were and how much they could contribute to the business. And largely it was my own kind of ignorance and a little bit lack of ambition to sort of be in control of everything, where I pushed a lot of power and control out of them and said, hey, what do you think we should do here? What should we just, what's this decision? And the thing that I was amazed by is the business that I took over had been declining for 3 years, and it was barely making any money when we got it. And it was a really small business. And the 3 of them largely, I was there every day too, but I would say not that competent. The 3 of them grew the business 35-40% year over year in the very first month, and every month thereafter. Like, they just catapulted the thing. And I really came onto this thing of coming from the backgrounds we do. Like, I wound up talking to a bunch of other folks in the pet care space and realizing that it's this industry where it's a people first business. The people are the thing that matter to the owners. Yeah. And yet none of the business models in the space are good for the people. And what I mean by that is that there's not really another organization where people at the ground level can move up and get more responsibility, get a bigger salary, maybe get equity in the company, right? Unless you just break off and buy your own or start your own. There's no other way to do it. And so my belief at Riverdog, and our mission is, we're trying to be the best place to work in pet care. We're just blatantly stealing the Bain motto, and we're saying this is a huge industry. It's $10 billion. It's largely driven by entry level people who don't have experience when they first get into the industry. And we want to see a place where people can get better and better. They can move up and make more and more money over time. And they can feel like, hey, I'm a caregiver to so many people's dogs, and I'm a huge part of this community. Like, owners really care for me. They respect me. They know me. I'm respecting my company. I can bring my experience to bear and do a great job for these dogs. And I think that we're trying to basically build a company and a platform for people to be able to do that. And candidly, I don't believe there's a lot of other folks who have that out there.
It's so awesome. It's so awesome, and it's so obvious when you say it, because I'm just thinking, like, another example that I can think of is Southwest Airlines. It's this low-cost airline, but I always feel like my experiences on Southwest flights are better than other airlines, despite the fact that there's no frills, because it just seems like the employees are happier. And they bring that energy, like the way that they're constantly joking on the intercom, and like they just seem to bring a joy to their job that even in that small instance of, like, my interaction with them is pretty close to zero on a flight. But still, I tangibly think about it, and it does improve my quality of the experience. And so in a service-oriented business like pet care, it's got to be even just way more important. If you're just coming in and you're just seeing someone who's grumpy and unhappy, it's compared to someone like that feels like you're entering like a Southwest Airlines experience. That just makes a world of difference.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, my unscientific sort of belief or experience, just for being in the industry for a few years now, is that 90% of the purchase decision, for a dog daycare is, when I hand the leash off, does the person I give the leash to love my dog? And if I believe they love my dog, then that's pretty much the only thing I care about. And if I don't believe that, nothing else that you guys do really matters to me. Like, I don't care really what the price is or the location or the brand or the marketing, or like nothing else really matters to me. The thing that matters to me is I want to know that the people caring for my dog love them. And like, if I believe that, then I'm sold. And if I don't believe that, nothing else is going to make a difference. And I think candidly, from the dog's perspective, that's even more true. That's probably 98%, right? I think our team, like we genuinely love being with the dogs, and you could just see how much fun people have with them, and it should be a really joyful, happy place. But the reality is, if you have other kind of issues at work, or you're feeling like, I'm not respected in this culture, or I don't like this or whatever, and you get kind of beaten down, it's a tough job and it's physical. And if we're not having fun, then it's tougher as an employee. It's tough to feel that way. And so we do what we can. We're very focused on how do we make this a good place to come to work, where people are actually like, hey, I'm pleased to be showing up here. I feel excited about this, and that's our mission. That's our goal.
That is awesome, man. So I think I have to say this. Wouldn't it be awesome if more companies made employees the primary plank of their strategy for how they think about generating whatever return on investment they're thinking about?
I do think that would be awesome. I really believe in that. And I also think that it's good business. We didn't really talk about the full flywheel, but I think in most ecosystems, being good at getting someone's ROI dialed in is going to benefit everyone in the ecosystem. So you can start with a massive consumer surplus, funnel that into the business, which then you'll probably wind up paying people well because you can.
Yes. Yeah.
You can start with, this is a business that generates unbelievable ROIs. Yeah. That probably funnels also into employees who maybe are extremely happy and then therefore funnel it back. Costco might be an example. But you could also say, we're going to try to dial in the employee value proposition.
Yeah.
If the employees come to work happy, customers will be thrilled. And when customers are thrilled, they're going to come back and you're going to wind up with a wonderful business. And so everybody can benefit in this cycle as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If you get it right, the flywheel is so virtuous. Like Bain is an example of this. They make money hand over fist. I think most of the examples that come to mind for lower cost industries seem to be ones in which it was the consumer first that led to the employee. Like Southwest, I think, is like low cost airline, or like Amazon is on consumer surplus. And it seems like the employee, I can't really think of many service industries or non-premium industries where it seems like the employee is first. Is that?
I will tell you, I think it's fairly rare. I've talked to a lot of folks, because obviously just now spending time in this, that I've talked to a lot of folks in adjacent-ish industries. And I know from a corporate perspective, people do think about this. Like, there are people who realize that, but I think that it's rare to see someone who just starts with that premise.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess the question would be, how do you measure it? Because what I loved about that Amazon letter, their shareholder letter, I guess for this year, was when they quantified the benefit to consumers. I mean, it's not perfect. I can quibble with the methodology all you want, but they're basically saying like hours saved in terms of shopping trips, in terms of how quick they're able to go into Amazon, get it, and what that consumer surplus has generated. It just means like, okay, they're thinking about it. They really are thinking about it, and you can see how much that's driving how they're operating the business. Is there like a measurement struggle on the employee side? Like, are you tracking like employee NPS? What does it actually look like in terms of if you really saying you're taking it seriously and you follow the tenet, what gets measured gets managed? What is the measurement?
Yeah, I really struggle with this a lot. This is a good question. So we've tried different things. We tried employee NPS. We tried actually hiring like a Bain career coach, like somebody who worked at Bain coaching consultants for a while. We obviously look at our retention and we look at like, are we able to meaningfully increase economics for folks, right? How many people have had X% increase in their wages, for example? How many people have gotten equity issuances? So we look at some of this stuff, but I do think that, with customers, you have like this nice clean, like retention and revenue, and like with employees, it is a little bit messier. And I think for us, I feel like it's a work in progress, dialing in what's the right thing to look at, what's the right thing to care about. Because I think you're right. What gets measured does get managed. And there's not as clean of a metric that's as bulletproof, I guess, as just like a business result.
Yeah, I don't know. There's like this, one of my favorite, actually the only Supreme Court quote that I know is like in that porn case. You know it when you see it.
Yeah.
So it feels like one of those things to me in terms of knowing like what your culture is like and what it's like for employees. But it still does feel like, then you just struggle with the issue where everyone talks about it, but then how do you actually be about it?
That's right. I think that's 100%. And so even, we are certainly not perfect. We have a lot of issues. It's not like our employee experience is amazing. Like we're starting from a fairly low place and we're improving, I think, off that. But if you make it a journey every day where every day you try to get a little better, like you will wind up kind of separating meaningfully, which is cool. And then the last thing is sort of like, if it's not good, you'll know that too, because people won't stick around. And that's the other thing that kind of is like the ultimate proof in the pudding for us. I think I know, like, at least of our initial sort of founding team, I think we still have 7 of the 8 of our early employees are still with us. And, that to me, that tells a lot. And we've been trying to think about what's the right retention, because we do find that, like, when we hire people early, like initially, there's a meaningful amount of churn in the first 6 months. And then once somebody has stayed 6 months, there's quite low churn. And so trying to, like, I don't want to sort of say, like, you don't want to engineer a metric that you can win, because then it tells you what you want to hear. But at the same time, you do have to think about it, like, logically, like, well, what are we really trying to gain here? Like, what's really the most important way to look at this?
Actually, the only other example that comes to mind now is Zappos, because it feels like they had that thing where they paid people after the training period to leave, to, like, not take the job. And then, like, Zappos really broke through based on the fact that their customer service was, like, gigantically different than any other e-commerce business prior to Zappos. Essentially, it wasn't just like, how quick do you get off phone calls? They were just like, oh, let's talk to people for as long as we want. And just make sure they feel happy. Like they would literally, there's like legendary stories of how they would completely go over the top to try to end each customer call well.
100%. That's a great example. I think that's a wonderful example of somebody who did that well. And obviously, employees loved working there, and they built a hugely successful business. And yeah, to your point, like maybe even doing things that are, I mean, in that case, very counterintuitive, maybe almost irrational, of like, we're going to pay you not to take the job. We're just going to see how far we can push it.
Yeah. It just came to mind because you said this 6-month window. I was like, oh, well, maybe if you had offered to pay them, the people who left in the first 6 months would have just left at the start.
It's a reasonable idea. I don't know. That's a very interesting thing they did. And I think that that's definitely coming from the right place, which is, hey, we want aligned people and we want to invest a lot in them and we want to make this an amazing job for you.
Yeah. Any businesses that you really like that looking up to from an employee first mentality?
So I think in our space, I know the founders of Modern Animal, which is a vet clinic and chain in Los Angeles. And I think they are also taking a very interesting employee first, mission and mentality in another field that's very tough. The vet field is just brutal because it's just, from an employee perspective, just you're dealing with sick animals all day. So it can be pretty mentally taxing. And I think those guys are doing a great job. I think, honestly, I do think that there is this sort of shift in corporate consciousness that is moving more companies in this direction. Like there's a few folks who did it historically. I just finished, the guy who started the Container Store wrote a biography, and I think they got up to 300 locations, and I think he did a very interesting job of creating a culture. So I think there are some folks that have been around longer that I look up to. And then, now I think there's a lot of folks who are starting, and I think all of us are sort of iterating on this idea and trying to think about what's the right way to build a company like this today.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you doing this with me.
Awesome. Later.
Welcome to Kids Corner.
Today, we're talking about the news. I was thinking we could talk a little bit about what's happening in the news. What happened with the gas? Can you tell me what happened?
So, the gas, someone attacked it with the computer.
Someone attacked it with the computer?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There's no more gas for 5 days, and the police are trying to catch him.
Who did this?
They sent it out the last name, Darkside.
Darkside? Oh my goodness. Have the police caught Darkside?
Not yet.
Wait. Who is Darkseid? Who is Darkseid? Is it a boy or a girl?
I honestly think it's a boy.
You honestly think it's a boy?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because boys are more... I just think it's a boy.
Okay, you just think it's a boy.
I
So
just think it's a boy.
you just think it's a boy. Okay, that's a hunch. It's a good hunch. Now,
Boy.
what was your idea for how we catch this boy?
We go on our scooters really fast each house. And knock at each door and say your last name Darkseid.
So we're going to knock on each door and ask if their last name is
In
Darkseid?
every country. And when we go to New Orleans, we'll knock on every door too.
So we're gonna knock on doors everywhere we go?
Uh-huh.
But how much time will we spend doing this?
Each day.
Every day we're gonna do this? What if they just pretend their name isn't Darkseid, even though it is?
We'll ask them for real. Tell us the truth. We'll just show them our car. So and they know what the police car looks like. And we'll just show them our car. And then we'll think they're not trying to tell the police on them. So then maybe they'll tell us if they're asking Darkseid or no.
Okay.
Wouldn't it be...